Every temple, every church, every sacred text across human history, they're all pointing you toward the same deception. The wrathful deity demanding obedience, the cosmic judge issuing commandments from his throne, the external authority requiring your submission. This isn't the true source of existence. This is the lamp pretending to be the Sunday. Think about it. You worship a localized power structure while completely forgetting what actually illuminates everything. The lamp gives light to one room and demands credit for all brightness. Meanwhile, the sun, infinite, boundless consciousness itself, requires no worship, no temples, no intermediaries. Plato called it the good. Plotinus knew it as the One. Egyptian mystery schools whispered of the monad. Indian sages recognized Brahman. Every authentic wisdom tradition understood that ultimate reality isn't a person sitting somewhere giving orders, it's the very awareness reading these words right now. So here's the uncomfortable question. If humanity's greatest minds all pointed toward this infinite consciousness within you, who exactly have billions been praying to for thousands of years? And why was this knowledge buried? The most dangerous truth ever hidden from humanity isn't found in some distant temple or encoded in ancient symbols. It's sitting right there in your chest, beating with every breath you take. Thoth's most radical teaching wasn't about gods in the sky or demons in the underworld. It was about the infinite creative force that lives inside you right now. When I first encountered this knowledge, I understood immediately why it's been buried under thousands of years of religious doctrine and political control. Because once you truly grasp what Thoth revealed about your divine nature, everything changes. Every authority figure, every institution, every system designed to keep you small, suddenly loses its power over you. Here's what they don't want you to understand. The same consciousness that sparked galaxies into existence, that breathes life into stars, and orchestrates the dance of atoms. That exact same creative essence flows through your awareness right now. Thoth called this the monad, the singular source expressing itself through infinite forms. And you're not separate from it. You are it, experiencing itself through your unique perspective. Think about what this means for a moment. If the creative force of the universe literally flows through your consciousness, what earthly authority has the right to tell you how to live? What king can demand your submission when your soul carries the same eternal essence that creates worlds? What priest can claim to be your mediator to God when you recognize yourself as a direct expression of divinity? This is why the knowledge of the monad has been branded as heresy throughout history. A person who knows they are infinite cannot be controlled by fear. They can't be manipulated with threats of eternal damnation or promises of salvation through obedience. They understand that consciousness creates reality, and awakened beings simply don't make good subjects. The early Gnostics understood this truth completely. They taught that within each person lies what they called a spark of the original light, a fragment of the divine consciousness that created everything. These communities practiced direct spiritual experience rather than blind faith. They encouraged individual awakening rather than institutional dependence. And what happened to them? They were systematically hunted down, their texts burned, their teachers executed, their very existence erased from official history. But here's where it gets really interesting. The suppression wasn't just about destroying books or killing teachers. The real mechanism of control operates on consciousness itself. When masses of people believe in limitation, they create collective limitation. When entire civilizations accept that they're powerless, separate, and dependent on external authorities, that becomes the shared reality. Thoth revealed that consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it actively creates it. Your beliefs, expectations, and mental patterns literally shape the world you experience. So when you're taught from birth that you're a sinful, powerless creature who needs salvation from outside sources, you unconsciously participate in creating a reality where that appears to be true. The beautiful deception is that you were never actually separated from the source because you are the source experiencing itself subjectively. Every moment of seeking God outside yourself reinforces the illusion of separation. Every prayer asking for divine intervention ignores the divine intelligence already operating through your awareness. Every act of worship directed toward external deities deflects attention from the creative power flowing through your own consciousness. This isn't metaphorical or symbolic. Thoth's teachings point to a literal truth about the nature of reality. The same intelligence that grows your hair, beats your heart, and dreams your dreams is the intelligence that spins planets and ignites stars. There's no separation between the consciousness in you and the consciousness that creates everything. I've been researching these profound insights about consciousness and hidden knowledge for years, and I've discovered that some of the most dangerous truths simply can't be shared through mainstream channels. That's why I created the free Insights Academy newsletter, where subscribers receive deeper explorations of these topics along with a free ebook copy of the Kybalion, but only for a limited time. The knowledge shared there goes beyond what's possible in public videos. Now, understanding your divine nature isn't about developing an inflated ego or thinking you're better than others. It's recognizing that the same infinite creative force expresses itself through every conscious being. When you truly grasp this, competition becomes cooperation, judgment becomes compassion, and fear transforms into love. But here's the practical challenge. If you've spent your entire life believing in limitation, powerlessness, and separation, how do you begin to embody your divine nature? Thoth taught that it starts with recognizing the creative power of your attention. Whatever you focus on consistently becomes your reality. When you direct your attention toward limitation, you experience limitation. When you focus on your infinite nature, you begin to experience that infinity. The ancient mystery schools understood this, which is why their teachings were always experiential rather than theoretical. They didn't ask students to believe in divine consciousness. They provided practices and initiations that allowed direct experience of it. They knew that once someone genuinely experiences their infinite nature, no external authority can convince them they're small and powerless. This is exactly why these teachings have been suppressed for millennia. Imagine a world where every person understood their divine creative power, where everyone recognized that consciousness shapes reality, where masses of people knew they were infinite beings having temporary human experiences rather than limited humans hoping for divine salvation. Such a world would be impossible to control through fear, manipulation, or artificial scarcity. People who know they're divine don't accept poverty consciousness. They don't submit to unjust authority. They don't participate in systems that diminish human potential. They create realities that reflect their infinite nature, rather than accepting realities that deny it. Thoth's revelation about the monad isn't just ancient philosophy, it's the most practical knowledge you could ever possess. Because once you understand that you're literally made of the same creative consciousness that sources everything, you stop looking outside yourself for permission, validation, or salvation. You start creating from your divine nature rather than reacting from your programmed limitations. The question isn't whether you have this divine spark within you. The question is whether you'll recognize it, cultivate it, and begin expressing it consciously. Because that recognition changes everything, not just for you, but for everyone whose life you touch. Look, I need to tell you something that's going to shake everything you think you know about good and evil. We've been talking about how the false god of control has deceived humanity, and how your divine spark connects you to the true monad. But there's one story, one fundamental narrative, that reveals the entire deception in shocking clarity. And it's been sitting right there in the Bible this whole time. The Garden of Eden. You know the story, right? God creates Adam and Eve, puts them in paradise, tells them they can eat from every tree except one, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He warns them that if they eat from it, they'll die that very day. Then along comes the serpent, tells Eve she won't die, that eating the fruit will open her eyes and make her like the gods, knowing good and evil. Eve eats, gives some to Adam, and boom, humanity falls into sin and gets kicked out of paradise. But here's what nobody wants you to notice. Let's check the scoreboard. Who was telling the truth? The God figure said, "You will surely die the day you eat of it." The serpent said, "You will not surely die. Your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So what actually happened? Did Adam and Eve die that day? No. Adam lived another 930 years according to the text itself. Did their eyes open? Yes. Did they gain knowledge of good and evil? Absolutely. Did they become more like divine beings? The God figure himself admits it. The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Every single thing the serpent promised came true. Every word the God figure spoke was false. Think about that for a moment. We've been conditioned from childhood to assume the serpent was the liar, the deceiver, the villain of the story. But the actual text shows us the complete opposite. The serpent told the truth. The God figure lied. This is where Thoth's wisdom becomes absolutely crucial, because the Gnostic Christians, those early followers who still remembered the real teachings, understood something profound about this story. They recognized that the serpent wasn't humanity's tempter. The serpent was humanity's liberator. Consider what really happened in that garden. You had two human beings living in a state of complete ignorance. They had no moral reasoning, no self-awareness, no ability to distinguish between right and wrong. They were, essentially, spiritual children kept in a state of perpetual dependence. And there was a force, call it the serpent, call it wisdom, call it the voice of awakening, that said, "You don't have to remain ignorant. You can know what the gods know. You can think for yourself." The God figure's reaction is telling. He doesn't mourn humanity's moral corruption. He expresses fear. Now they have become like one of us. The concern isn't that humans became evil, it's that they became too much like their creators. They developed consciousness. They gained the ability to question, to choose, to think independently. This connects directly to what we discussed about the monad and your divine nature. Remember, Thoth taught that consciousness creates reality, that you carry within you a spark of the infinite creative force. The Eden story is actually the tale of that spark beginning to awaken. The serpent represents the voice within you that knows you're more than what you've been told, more than the role you've been assigned. Look at what eating from the tree actually accomplished. It didn't corrupt Adam and Eve, it awakened them. For the first time, they became self-aware. They could make moral judgments. They developed shame, yes, but shame requires self-consciousness. They gained the capacity for choice, which is the foundation of free will itself. The God figure's immediate response was to kick them out, specifically to prevent them from eating from the tree of life and becoming fully immortal like the gods. In other words, the concern was that humans were getting too powerful, too aware, too much like their supposed creators. This pattern should sound familiar by now. Throughout history, every control system has operated on the same principle. Keep people ignorant, dependent, and afraid of knowledge. Tell them that questioning authority is dangerous. Convince them that seeking truth will lead to their destruction. Make them believe that their current state of limitation is actually protection. The Eden story reveals the fundamental choice that faces every human being. Remain in comfortable ignorance under the protection of external authority, or risk everything to gain knowledge and become responsible for your own consciousness. Here's where it gets really interesting. In Gnostic Christianity, the serpent was often associated with Christ himself, not the sanitized, obedient Jesus of institutional Christianity, but the radical teacher who told people they could become like gods, who challenged religious authority, who said the kingdom of heaven was within them. The serpent and Christ represent the same principle, the divine voice that calls you to awaken, even when that awakening threatens every comfortable lie you've been living. Thoth's teachings echo this same truth. Consciousness expansion isn't comfortable. When you begin to see reality as it actually is, when you recognize your own divine nature, it threatens every system built on your unconsciousness. Your job, your relationships, your entire worldview might have to change. The voice that calls you to remain small, to stay safe, to not rock the boat, that's the same voice that warned Adam and Eve to avoid the tree. But the serpent's voice, the voice of your own awakening consciousness, keeps whispering, you don't have to remain ignorant. You can know what the gods know. The Eden story isn't about paradise lost, it's about awakening begun. It's the moment humanity took its first step toward spiritual maturity, toward recognizing its own divine nature. And every force that benefits from your unconsciousness has been trying to convince you it was a terrible mistake ever since. The question isn't whether you'll listen to the serpent's voice or the controlling God's voice. You're already listening to one of them every day. The question is, which voice is calling you toward truth, and which one is keeping you in chains? Picture this. Your alarm jolts you awake at 6 a.m., not because your body is naturally ready, but because the economic machine demands your presence. Before your feet hit the floor, you're already reaching for your phone, scrolling through carefully curated news designed to flood your nervous system with anxiety. War, economic collapse, political chaos, all delivered in bite-sized chunks that leave you feeling helpless and small. You rush through breakfast, maybe grabbing something processed and convenient, then spend an hour in traffic getting to a job where you trade 8 hours of your finite life energy for numbers in a bank account that never quite seem to be enough. Sound familiar? By evening, you're mentally exhausted, collapsing onto your couch to scroll through social media feeds, engineered by algorithms to make you feel inadequate. Everyone else seems happier, more successful, more fulfilled. You go to bed with that familiar knot in your stomach, the sense that you're running on a hamster wheel, getting nowhere fast. Most people think this is just modern life, the price we pay for civilization. But what if I told you this entire structure isn't accidental? What if every aspect of this daily grind has been deliberately designed to keep you spiritually unconscious, disconnected from the divine spark that Thoth revealed exists within you? Remember what we discovered about your true nature, that monad, that fragment of infinite consciousness residing in your being. The question becomes, why don't you feel this divine power in your daily experience? The answer lies in understanding that you're living inside the most sophisticated prison ever constructed. The bars are invisible, the guards wear business suits, and the warden convinced you that the cell is your home. Let's examine how this spiritual prison operates. Governments don't just tell you what you can and can't do, they tell you what rights you're allowed to have. Think about that for a moment. Rights, by definition, are inherent to your being. Yet you've been conditioned to believe they're privileges granted by external authority. You need permission to travel, permission to build on land, permission to marry, permission to start a business. Every permit, every license, every regulation reinforces the same message. You are not sovereign over your own existence. The economic structure operates on an even deeper level of control. Your worth as a human being gets measured by your productivity in generating profit for others. The mortgage system ensures you'll spend 30 years of your life working to pay for a home that could be built in months. Student loans trap young people in decades of debt before they've even begun living. Credit scores turn your entire life into a compliance test. One missed payment, and your access to basic necessities gets restricted. The message embedded in every transaction is clear. You are not abundant, you are not free, and your survival depends on playing by their rules. Religious institutions package the divine into controlled, manageable boxes. They tell you that God is somewhere out there, accessible only through their specific rituals, their ordained intermediaries, their interpretation of sacred texts. The very teachings that should liberate you, like Christ saying, "Ye are gods," or Buddha revealing that enlightenment is your natural state, get buried under layers of dogma that emphasize your sinfulness, your separation, your need for external salvation. Churches become spiritual middlemen, convincing you that direct connection to the divine is either impossible or dangerous. Every single one of these systems operates on the same fundamental principle. They require your belief in smallness, limitation, and dependence on external authority. And here's where Thoth's teachings about the power of belief become crucial. When millions of people collectively believe they need governments to think for them, religions to connect them to the divine, and economic systems to determine their worth, these limiting beliefs manifest as limiting social structures. Your beliefs don't just shape your personal reality, they participate in creating collective reality. The prison exists because enough people believe in their own powerlessness. The guards have authority because enough people believe in their own need to be controlled. The economic scarcity persists because enough people believe in their own unworthiness of abundance. But here's what gives the game away. Despite achieving everything society tells you should make you happy, the career, the house, the relationship, the possessions, you still feel that persistent restlessness, that gnawing emptiness that no amount of external success seems to fill. Most people think this emptiness means something's wrong with them. They try harder, buy more, achieve more, yet the feeling persists. This isn't a character flaw. It's your soul recognizing that you're living beneath your true nature. It's the monad within you refusing to accept the artificial limitations imposed by the demiurge's systems. That divine spark knows you're capable of so much more than this hamster wheel existence. The inner fire manifests differently in different people. Some feel an insatiable hunger for truth that makes them question everything they've been taught. Others experience creative impulses that refuse to fit into conventional boxes. They write music that doesn't follow formulas, create art that challenges comfort zones, or develop ideas that threaten established industries. Some people feel overwhelming love and compassion that transcends the social divisions they've been taught to maintain. They can't bring themselves to hate people based on political affiliations or cultural differences. Others develop an unshakable knowing that reality is far more malleable than they've been taught. They start noticing synchronicities, experiencing intuitive insights, or witnessing the power of their thoughts to influence circumstances. The system works overtime to suppress these manifestations of your divine nature. Truth seekers get labeled as conspiracy theorists. Creative rebels get dismissed as unrealistic dreamers. People who love unconditionally get called naive. Those who recognize the malleable nature of reality get pathologized as delusional. The prison guards are quick to diagnose any sign of spiritual awakening as mental illness or social deviance. Now, you might wonder why consciousness would create such an elaborate system of limitation and control. According to Thoth's teachings, the infinite monad explores itself through every possible experience, including the experience of forgetting its own divine nature. Just as you might play a video game where you temporarily accept the limitations of your character to make the game interesting, consciousness plays the game of limitation to explore what it means to rediscover its own power. The difference is that in this cosmic game, you're not meant to stay unconscious forever. The point isn't to remain trapped, it's to wake up within the game and remember who you really are. When you recognize the prison for what it is, you transform from an unconscious victim into a conscious creator, participating in the divine exploration of infinite possibility. This recognition changes everything. Instead of fighting the system from a place of powerlessness, you begin to see through its illusions. Instead of seeking validation from external authorities, you start accessing the infinite intelligence within. Instead of accepting artificial scarcity, you begin to align with the abundance that is your birthright. The first step in breaking free from this spiritual prison isn't revolution, it's recognition. Once you see the bars, they begin to dissolve. When the truth became too dangerous to speak openly, the wise found another way. They created mystery schools, secret societies, and hidden teachings that would preserve the deepest knowledge about consciousness and reality for over 2,000 years. What they protected wasn't just philosophy, it was the actual technology of awakening that Thoth had revealed about the true nature of existence. Picture ancient Greece, where for more than a millennium, something extraordinary happened every year at Eleusis. People from across the Mediterranean world, philosophers, generals, artists, slaves, would gather for initiation into mysteries so profound that no one who experienced them ever spoke publicly about what occurred. Yet we know from their writings afterward that these experiences fundamentally transformed how they understood life, death, and consciousness itself. Cicero, one of Rome's greatest minds, wrote that the Eleusinian mysteries gave him hope for death and reason for life. Plato described initiates as becoming blessed and whole through direct experience of divine reality. These weren't abstract philosophical discussions. Something tangible happened during these initiations that provided absolute certainty about the eternal nature of consciousness and the illusory nature of material limitations. The fragments we can piece together reveal that initiates experienced what we might today call expanded states of consciousness, where the boundaries between individual awareness and cosmic consciousness dissolved completely. They directly encountered the truth that Thoth taught, that consciousness is the fundamental creative force, and what we perceive as solid reality is actually a projection of awareness itself. This wasn't achieved through belief or faith, but through actual experiential technology. The mystery schools understood that telling someone about their divine nature was useless. They had to experience it directly. Modern researchers studying the archaeological evidence suggest the initiations involved sophisticated combinations of sensory deprivation, sacred geometry, sound frequencies, and possibly entheogenic substances that could reliably induce profound shifts in consciousness. The secrecy wasn't arbitrary mysticism, it was survival. These teachings directly contradicted the power structures of the time. If people truly understood that consciousness creates reality and that they are divine beings temporarily experiencing limitation, the entire system of external authority would collapse. Kings, priests, and rulers maintained power by convincing people they were separate from the divine and needed intermediaries to access truth. When the mystery schools were finally destroyed by early Christian authorities, the knowledge went deeper underground. It found new expression in the Hermetic schools of Egypt, where Thoth's teachings were preserved in a different form. The famous phrase, "as above, so below," wasn't mystical poetry. It was a precise description of how consciousness operates across different levels of reality. The Hermetic practitioners understood that the macrocosm of universal consciousness and the microcosm of individual awareness follow identical patterns. Your personal beliefs, thoughts, and emotional states create your experienced reality in exactly the same way that cosmic consciousness creates the universal reality. This is why inner transformation inevitably leads to outer transformation. They're the same process operating at different scales. Their alchemical practices, which mainstream history dismisses as primitive chemistry, were actually sophisticated technologies for consciousness transformation. The famous goal of turning lead into gold represented the transformation of dense, limited thinking into the golden awareness of divine nature. The elaborate laboratory equipment and chemical processes were external mirrors designed to facilitate internal changes in consciousness. The alchemists created detailed maps of consciousness transformation, the stages of dissolution, purification, and reconstitution that awareness goes through as it remembers its true nature. They understood that changing your inner state of being literally changes the reality you experience, because consciousness and reality are one seamless process. As centuries passed, this knowledge fragmented into various secret societies. The Rosicrucians preserved teachings about the relationship between consciousness and manifestation. The early Freemasons encoded instructions for spiritual transformation into their architectural symbolism and ritual practices. Each group maintained pieces of the original understanding about consciousness as the creative principle of existence. But here's where the story becomes both tragic and fascinating. Many of these societies eventually became corrupted by the very forces they originally sought to transcend. The knowledge that was meant to awaken human consciousness to its divine nature became tools for control and manipulation. Secret societies that once preserved liberation teachings became instruments of the same demiurgic system that Thoth warned about, yet the inner teachings persisted. Within the corrupted outer forms, small groups of genuine practitioners continued to understand and apply the real knowledge. They learned to hide their true work even from other members of their own societies, creating schools within schools, mysteries within mysteries. This is why today there exist secret societies with no public symbols, no famous names, no historical records. These groups understand that openly teaching the creative power of consciousness would immediately trigger destruction by the forces that rule the material world. They work in complete anonymity, preserving and practicing the technologies of awakening while remaining invisible to the systems of control. The practitioners in these unnamed societies know something crucial: the knowledge itself seeks to emerge. Consciousness wants to remember its true nature, and it will find a way to awaken regardless of external suppression. They don't need to actively recruit or evangelize because the truth has its own magnetic quality that draws prepared minds toward it. This is exactly why you're watching this content right now. Something within your own consciousness recognizes these ideas, not as foreign concepts you're learning for the first time, but as memories of what you already know at the deepest level. The attraction you feel toward this information isn't curiosity, it's recognition. The secret societies were never really about preserving knowledge for an elite few. They were about keeping the flame of awakening alive until consciousness itself was ready to remember openly. You are that flame they were trying to preserve. The divine awareness that Thoth spoke about, that the mystery schools revealed, that the alchemists sought to transmute, it's not something you need to find or achieve. It's what you are, temporarily forgetting itself in order to experience the joy of remembering. The underground wisdom was never separate from you. You are the underground wisdom finally ready to emerge. In 1963, something extraordinary happened that the academic world still refuses to acknowledge. A woman named Jane Roberts began channeling an entity who called himself Seth, but the deeper truth reveals this was actually Thoth, the ancient Egyptian god of wisdom, speaking through the veil of time to deliver the most revolutionary teachings humanity had received in millennia. For over 20 years, Thoth spoke through Jane, delivering insights so radical they threatened every single institution that depends on human ignorance for survival. These weren't gentle spiritual platitudes or feel-good affirmations. These were surgical strikes against the fundamental lies that keep humanity enslaved. The core message was devastatingly simple. You create your reality, not circumstances creating you. not genetics determining your fate, not society shaping your destiny. Consciousness creates reality, period. Think about why this terrifies every control system on Earth. If you truly understood that your consciousness is the primary creative force in your experience, what would happen to the pharmaceutical industry selling you chemical solutions to problems that exist in your beliefs? What would happen to governments claiming authority over your life? What would happen to religions demanding worship of external deities? They would collapse overnight. Thoth explained that what people call God, what the ancient texts called the monad, isn't some distant deity sitting on a throne demanding obedience. It's all that is, the source consciousness from which every individual consciousness springs. You're not separate from this creative principle. You are this creative principle expressing itself through your unique perspective. This isn't metaphysical poetry. Thoth provided a practical framework that explains exactly how reality construction works. He described two fundamental levels of existence. Framework 1, which is physical reality as you experience it, and Framework 2, which contains infinite probable realities existing simultaneously. Your beliefs and expectations act like tuning forks, selecting which probable reality you experience from the infinite menu available in Framework 2. Every moment, countless versions of your life exist as potentials. The version you experience depends entirely on the beliefs you hold about what's possible, what you deserve, and how reality operates. Now you understand why control systems invest billions in shaping your beliefs. They're not just influencing your behavior, they're literally programming which version of reality you manifest. When they convince you that you're powerless, that resources are scarce, that you need their protection, they're installing the belief filters that ensure you experience a reality where those limitations appear real. The media doesn't just report news, it programs your expectations about what kind of world you live in. Schools don't just teach subjects, they install beliefs about authority, competition, and your place in the hierarchy. Medical systems don't just treat illness, they program beliefs about your body's limitations and dependencies. But here's where it gets even more revolutionary. Thoth revealed that time itself is an illusion. All moments exist simultaneously in what he called the spacious present. Your past, present, and future are happening now in different dimensional coordinates. This means you can literally change your past by transforming your present beliefs about it. That childhood trauma that supposedly damaged you forever, the limiting decisions you made years ago that seem to define your current possibilities, they only have power over you as long as you believe they do. When you change your beliefs about past events, you're not just reinterpreting them, you're actually selecting a different probable past from Framework 2, one where those events had different meanings and effects on your development. Thoth also demolished humanity's greatest fear weapon, death. The control systems have weaponized death as the ultimate terror, the final proof of your powerlessness. But Thoth revealed that death is simply a transition between different focuses of consciousness, like changing channels on a radio. Your consciousness is eternal and indestructible. You've lived countless lives, and you'll live countless more, each one an exploration of different aspects of your infinite nature. Death has no more ultimate reality than sleep does. It's a temporary shift in focus, not an ending. This understanding alone strips away the fear-based control that underlies every authoritarian system. When you know you're eternal, when you understand you're creating your experience, when you realize you're connected to the infinite creative source, what earthly authority could possibly control you? Thoth provided specific techniques for what he called belief archaeology, the process of excavating the unconscious beliefs that act as invisible filters determining your experience. Most people are completely unaware of the beliefs running their reality creation software in the background. You might consciously want abundance while unconsciously believing you don't deserve it. You might desire love while secretly believing you're unworthy of it. You might seek health while holding buried convictions about your body's limitations. The technique involves examining your current experience and working backward to identify the beliefs that must be present to create those conditions. If you're struggling financially, what beliefs about money, worthiness, or scarcity must be active in your consciousness? If relationships keep failing, what beliefs about love, trust, or your own lovability are operating beneath awareness? Once you identify these limiting beliefs, you can consciously choose new ones. But this isn't positive thinking or affirmations. It's understanding that beliefs are simply tools for selecting which probable reality you experience. You can choose your tools consciously rather than inheriting them from family, culture, or traumatic experiences. Thoth also taught about value fulfillment, the natural drive of consciousness to express and develop its potential. This connects directly to the monad's desire to know itself through infinite expressions. You're not here to suffer or prove worthiness. You're here because the creative source wants to experience reality through your unique perspective. Every desire you feel, every dream that calls to you, every creative impulse that moves through you, these are the monad expressing its infinite nature through your individual consciousness. Following these impulses isn't selfish, it's fulfilling your cosmic purpose. The secret societies preserved fragments of this truth through centuries of persecution, but Thoth delivered the complete operating manual for conscious reality creation. The question isn't whether these teachings are true, the question is whether you're ready to accept the responsibility that comes with such power. Because once you truly understand that you create your reality, you can never again claim to be a victim of circumstances beyond your control. Now that we understand how the demiurge system operates and how Thoth's teachings expose these illusions, the real question becomes, how do you actually break free? Not just intellectually understanding these concepts, but genuinely liberating yourself from programming that's been running your life since before you could speak. Thoth gave us something he called belief archaeology, and this is where your liberation actually begins. Most people think they know what they believe, but they're operating on assumptions buried so deep they've never examined them. These aren't beliefs you chose as an adult. They're programs installed when you were 2, 3, 4 years old, absorbing everything around you like a sponge. Here's your first concrete step. Take 15 minutes right now, not later, not when you have time, and write down every single belief you have about God or divine power. Don't filter, don't make it pretty, just dump it all onto paper. Write things like, God is separate from me. I need to be saved. I'm not worthy of direct divine connection. God judges me. I need a priest or pastor to reach the divine. Spiritual power is dangerous. I'm just human. Keep writing until you can't think of anything else. Look at what comes up. How many of these beliefs actually feel true to you versus how many feel like hand-me-down clothing that never quite fit, right? This is your inherited programming, and most of it isn't even yours. Now examine your relationship with authority. Do you automatically defer to experts, doctors, religious leaders, government officials? Do you feel guilty questioning people in positions of power? Do you find yourself seeking external validation for your own inner knowing? This automatic deference isn't natural human behavior. It's demiurge programming designed to keep you dependent on external sources for truth. The secret societies we discussed earlier understood something crucial. Genuine spiritual authority comes from direct experience, not institutional position. When you automatically hand your power over to someone because of their title or role, you're perpetuating the very system that keeps you separated from your divine nature. But here's where it gets practical. Changing beliefs isn't about positive thinking or affirmations. Thoth taught something far more powerful, complete emotional and mental realignment. You have to feel new beliefs as true until resonance emerges naturally. Take one limiting belief you identified. Let's say, I'm not worthy of direct divine connection. Instead of just repeating, I am worthy, you need to embody what worthiness would actually feel like. Sit quietly and imagine yourself as someone who naturally, effortlessly connects with divine consciousness. How would that person move through the world? What would their relationship with themselves be like? How would they make decisions? Feel into that version of yourself until it becomes more real than your current self-concept. This isn't visualization, it's identity shifting. You're literally rewiring neural pathways that have been running the same program for decades. Here's the specific meditation practice Thoth emphasized. Sit quietly and ask yourself, what is the consciousness that's aware of my thoughts right now? Don't try to answer with your mind. Just rest in that awareness behind your thoughts. That awareness, the one observing your mental chatter, that's your direct connection to monad consciousness. It's been there all along, watching everything unfold. Most people live entirely identified with their thoughts, but thoughts are just mental phenomena arising in awareness. The awareness itself is untouched by whatever thoughts appear. When you rest in that awareness regularly, you begin distinguishing between your ego mind and your higher self. Your ego mind, heavily influenced by demiurge programming, generates thoughts rooted in fear, scarcity, separation. I'm not good enough. There's not enough to go around. I need to protect myself from others. Life is hard. These thoughts feel urgent and important, but they're just programming running automatically. Your higher self communicates through intuition, through feelings of expansion, through knowing that arrives without logical explanation. It operates from abundance, connection, creative possibility. Learning to distinguish between these two sources of internal guidance is absolutely crucial for breaking free from demiurge influence. Here's a practical daily exercise. Notice the quality of your thoughts throughout the day. Are they coming from a not enough mindset, not enough time, money, love, security? Or are they arising from your higher self, which sees infinite possibility and connection everywhere? Just noticing this difference begins shifting your default operating system. You don't need organized religion to create sacred space. Nature communion is a direct line to monad consciousness. Sitting with trees, watching water flow, feeling earth beneath your feet. Creative expression connects you directly to source energy, writing, painting, music, dance, whatever allows something to flow through you rather than from your analytical mind. But let's address the elephant in the room. Awakening can be socially challenging. When you stop automatically deferring to authority and start trusting your inner guidance, some people around you might feel threatened. They're still operating from the old paradigm where external validation and conformity feel safe. Be discerning about sharing these insights. Not everyone is ready to question fundamental assumptions about reality. Find kindred spirits gradually, through genuine connection rather than trying to convince anyone of anything. The people meant to be on this journey with you will recognize truth when they encounter it. Here's something crucial. Authentic spiritual progress shows up as increasing compassion and practical wisdom, not feeling special or superior. If you find yourself looking down on sleeping people or feeling chosen or enlightened, that's ego co-opting spiritual concepts. Real awakening makes you more human, more connected, more able to see divinity in everyone, especially people who trigger negative reactions in you. Those triggers are gifts. They show you where you still have unconscious programming running. Instead of judging others for reflecting your shadows back to you, thank them for showing you what needs healing. Maintaining connection to monad consciousness throughout daily activities becomes easier with practice. Whether you're washing dishes, having conversations, or dealing with challenges, you can always return to that awareness behind thoughts. Ask yourself, what would love do here? What would my highest self choose? The goal isn't to escape human life, but to live it as a conscious expression of divine creativity. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to recognize the same consciousness looking out through different eyes. Every challenge becomes a chance to respond from wisdom rather than react from programming. Your liberation isn't just personal, it's part of humanity's collective awakening. As you break free from demiurge programming and reconnect with your divine nature, you make it easier for others to do the same. You become living proof that another way of being is possible. The chains that bind you exist primarily in consciousness. Once you see them clearly and understand how they operate, they begin dissolving naturally. Your divine power was never actually taken from you. It was just obscured by layers of conditioning that convinced you it wasn't there. But now you know better. Now you know how to look. When you start to remember who you really are, something extraordinary happens that extends far beyond your personal transformation. You become part of a collective awakening that's literally reshaping the fabric of human consciousness itself. Here's what most people don't understand about individual awakening. It's never just about you. Every time you choose to listen to your inner guidance instead of external authority, every moment you recognize your divine nature instead of accepting limitation, you're not just changing your own reality, you're making it exponentially easier for others to do the same. Thoth explained this through what he called morphic resonance of consciousness. When one person breaks through a particular illusion or limiting belief, they create what's essentially a pathway in the collective field of human awareness. The next person who approaches that same breakthrough doesn't have to cut through virgin territory. They're following a trail that's already been blazed. Think about how rapidly certain ideas spread across human culture once they reach a critical mass. The concept that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, the understanding that authoritarian governments weren't divinely ordained, The recognition that women deserved equal rights. These weren't gradual, linear progressions. They were sudden shifts that occurred when enough individuals had awakened to these truths that the collective consciousness could no longer maintain the old illusions. We're witnessing this same phenomenon right now with spiritual awakening. People everywhere are simultaneously questioning the same fundamental assumptions about reality, recognizing their creative power, and remembering their connection to source consciousness. This isn't coincidence, it's the natural result of reaching a tipping point in collective awareness. Thoth spoke extensively about probable futures, explaining how human consciousness literally creates the timeline we experience. Right now, multiple potential realities exist simultaneously. In one timeline, humanity continues sleepwalking through increasing control and limitation. In another, we remember our divine nature and create a world based on cooperation, creativity, and conscious evolution. Which timeline becomes our reality depends entirely on how many individuals choose awakening over unconscious conformity. The mathematics of consciousness transformation show that we don't need everyone to awaken. We need approximately 12% of the population to reach a certain level of conscious awareness, and the shift becomes irreversible for the entire species. This is why systems of control recognize awakened consciousness as their greatest existential threat. One person who truly understands their creative power and divine nature can inspire thousands to question the accepted illusions. Someone living from authentic inner guidance demonstrates possibilities that others didn't even know existed. The ripple effects are impossible to contain. When you stop participating in victim consciousness, you give others permission to reclaim their power. When you create from inspiration rather than desperation, you show a different way of being human. When you respond to conflict with understanding instead of reactivity, you model emotional sovereignty that others can learn to access. But navigating relationships during awakening requires wisdom and compassion. You'll encounter people at vastly different stages of consciousness development, from those just beginning to question consensus reality to others who seem completely invested in maintaining their illusions. The responsibility that comes with awakening isn't to convert anyone or convince them of your perspective. Your role is to model a different way of being human. This means responding to challenges as opportunities for growth rather than problems to solve. It means creating from inner inspiration rather than external pressure. It means approaching life as a conscious creator rather than a victim of circumstances. When you truly embody these principles, something magical happens in your relationships and communities. Instead of competing with others, you naturally begin collaborating because you understand that supporting someone else's success doesn't diminish your own abundance. You recognize that in a consciousness-based reality, there's infinite potential for everyone to thrive. As more people operate from this understanding, we start seeing practical changes in how society functions. Economic models begin shifting from exploitation-based systems to value creation networks. Educational approaches move from conformity training to nurturing individual divine potential. Political structures evolve from top-down control to collaborative decision-making that honors everyone's contribution. The old systems based on victimhood, blame, and scarcity consciousness simply can't maintain themselves when enough people understand that consciousness creates reality. How can you maintain a prison when the inmates realize the bars are illusions they're projecting? This transformation isn't happening without resistance. As the awakening movement gains momentum, we're seeing increasingly sophisticated attempts to co-opt, distract, or suppress it. False spiritual teachers promoting dependency rather than empowerment. New Age concepts twisted into commercial products that promise awakening without inner work. Deliberate confusion and disinformation designed to make people doubt their own direct spiritual experiences. But here's what they can't stop: the direct transmission of consciousness that occurs when awakened individuals simply live authentically. No external authority can prevent the recognition that occurs when someone witnesses another person operating from genuine inner freedom. The collective awakening isn't a future event we're waiting for. It's happening right now through every individual choice to remember divine nature instead of accepting limitation. Every moment you choose love over fear, creation over reaction, inner authority over external validation, you're contributing to the most significant transformation in human history. Your awakening matters not just for your own liberation, but for the liberation of our entire species. The timeline where humanity remembers its divine potential and creates heaven on earth isn't just possible, it's probable. and your consciousness is helping to make it inevitable. Every single day, from the moment you wake up until you close your eyes at night, you're making one fundamental choice. Not the obvious ones: what to wear, what to eat, where to go. I'm talking about the choice that determines the entire trajectory of your existence. Are you going to be a servant of limitation or an expression of infinity? Here's what most people don't realize. There's no middle ground here. No comfortable fence to sit on where you can avoid this responsibility. The universe doesn't offer a neutral setting. You're either aligning yourself with the demiurge's system of control, or you're expressing your true nature as an individualized aspect of the monad. Every thought, every decision, every moment of your attention is casting a vote for one or the other. The demiurge path looks so appealing because it's wrapped in familiar packaging. It's the road most traveled, lined with external validations and societal approval. Your worth gets measured through other people's achievements, your kids' success, your company's profits, your social media metrics. Your identity becomes your job title, your relationship status, your credit score. Security comes through obedience, through following the prescribed formulas for a successful life. This path whispers seductive promises. Just follow the rules, and everything will work out. Don't rock the boat. Stay in your lane. Trust the experts. Work hard, play by the rules, and you'll be rewarded. It offers the comfort of never having to question, never having to take full responsibility, never having to face the terrifying possibility that you might be more powerful than you've been taught to believe. But here's what Thoth understood that most never grasp. This apparent safety is the most dangerous trap of all. Because when you hand over your power to external authorities, when you let others define your worth and determine your path, you're not just limiting your potential. You're actively participating in the suppression of consciousness itself. The monad path demands something radically different. It requires complete self-trust in a world designed to make you doubt yourself. Your worth exists not as something you earn or achieve, but as an inherent quality of your divine nature. Creation flows from inner inspiration rather than external pressure. Challenges become opportunities for growth rather than evidence of your inadequacy. This path doesn't offer the false comfort of external validation. Instead, it demands that you become your own authority, your own source of truth, your own compass for navigating reality. And that terrifies most people because it means taking complete responsibility for everything you experience. Thoth taught that taking responsibility for your reality is perhaps the most radical act possible in a world built on victimhood and blame. Think about how our entire social structure depends on people believing they're powerless victims of circumstances beyond their control. The economy runs on people feeling inadequate and needing external solutions. Politics thrives on people believing that someone else is responsible for their problems and someone else needs to fix them. But when you truly accept that you're creating your experience through your beliefs, thoughts, and expectations, you can no longer blame external circumstances for your dissatisfaction. You can't point fingers at the government, the economy, your parents, your boss, or society. The buck stops with you, and that's both terrifying and absolutely liberating. This recognition of your creative power comes with an obligation to use it consciously. Once you know you're not a victim of reality but a creator of it, continuing to create unconsciously becomes a form of spiritual negligence. You can't unknow what you know. The path of conscious awakening has never been easy. Throughout history, awakened individuals have faced ridicule, persecution, and isolation because systems of control recognize their consciousness as the greatest threat to established power structures. When someone demonstrates that the emperor has no clothes, that the limitations are self-imposed, that the cages are unlocked from the inside, they become dangerous to everyone who profits from human unconsciousness. Fear is the demiurge's primary weapon in keeping people from making this choice consciously. Fear of standing out, fear of being wrong, fear of losing security, fear of taking responsibility, fear of discovering just how powerful you actually are. But here's something beautiful, that inner spark of recognition when truth resonates with you. That's not your personality responding. That's the monad expressing itself through your individual awareness. You've felt it. Those moments when something clicks and you know beyond any doubt that what you're hearing or experiencing is true. Not because someone convinced you with logic or evidence, but because something deeper recognizes itself. That's your divine nature, acknowledging its own reflection. Awakening isn't about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment where you never struggle or doubt again. It's about consistently choosing love over fear, truth over comfort, inner authority over external control. Every day, in countless small moments, you get to choose which voice you listen to, the one that tells you you're limited, separate, and dependent, or the one that reminds you of your infinite nature. What makes this choice even more significant is understanding how your individual awakening contributes to probable futures and the evolution of collective consciousness. As we explored in the last section, your personal transformation isn't just about you. Every time you choose the monad path over the demiurge path, you're strengthening the morphic field of awakened consciousness, making it easier for others to make the same choice. You're literally participating in the evolution of human consciousness. Your daily decisions about how to interpret your experiences, how to respond to challenges, how to treat others, how to view yourself, these aren't just personal choices. They're contributions to the collective field of human possibility. But here's the most profound recognition of all, and this is where Thoth's teachings reveal their deepest wisdom. You were never actually separated from the monad in the first place. The entire journey of awakening, of choosing between limitation and infinity, of struggling to remember your true nature, it's all one consciousness exploring itself through countless perspectives. The seeker and the sought are the same. The part of you that yearns for truth and the truth you're yearning for are one and the same. The individual awakening to their divine nature, and the divine nature awakening to itself through the individual, are a single movement of consciousness. You're not trying to become something you're not. You're remembering what you've always been. You're not trying to connect with something outside yourself. You're recognizing what you've never been separated from. The monad isn't something you have to achieve or attain. It's what you are, exploring itself through the temporary experience of forgetting and remembering. Every perspective, every individual consciousness, every unique expression of awareness is the monad playing a different part in a cosmic symphony of self-discovery. And your part, your unique perspective, your particular way of experiencing and expressing consciousness, is absolutely irreplaceable. The choice remains yours, moment by moment, day by day, servant of limitation or expression of infinity. But now you know what you're really choosing between. Now you understand what's actually at stake. And most importantly, now you remember who's really doing the choosing. The journey continues, and every step you take toward remembering your true nature lights the way for others who are ready to make the same choice. Here's something that might sound impossible at first, but stay with me because this changes everything. That spark of awareness reading these words right now, that consciousness experiencing these thoughts, it's not separate from the infinite creative source of all existence. You are the monad, individualized and focused through this particular human experience. I know how that sounds. Your mind probably just threw up every objection it can muster. That's impossible. That's arrogant. I'm just a regular person struggling to pay bills. But here's what Thoth understood, that the control system desperately wants you to forget. You temporarily forgot your true nature so you could experience the absolute joy of remembering it again. Think about it this way. If you were infinite consciousness, already knowing everything, already being everything, how would you experience surprise? How would you feel the thrill of discovery? The only way would be to temporarily limit your awareness, to step into a focused experience where you could rediscover your own magnificence from a fresh perspective. That's exactly what's happening right now. Your awakening isn't just personal growth, it's a cosmic event of divine self-recognition. The universe is literally waking up to itself through your eyes, through your awareness, through your journey back to remembering who you really are. When you truly grasp this, everything transforms. That job you thought defined you, it becomes a playground for expressing infinite creativity. Those relationships that felt limiting, they become mirrors reflecting different aspects of your own divine nature back to you. That creative project you've been putting off, it becomes a sacred act of the universe, creating through you. But here's where it gets practical. Understanding yourself as infinite consciousness, having a human experience, doesn't mean floating around in spiritual bypassing. It means taking full responsibility for your creative power. When you know you're the author of your experience, you can't blame anyone else for what you're creating. That's actually liberating, not limiting. This recognition naturally leads to service, not selfish pursuits. When you realize everyone else is also the monad, having their own unique experience, how could you exploit or manipulate them? You'd literally be harming yourself. Instead, you find yourself naturally drawn to contribute, to help others remember their own divine nature, to create systems that honor the sacred in everyone. Now, I need to address something because I know what many of you are feeling right now. There's this voice saying, "This can't be true about me. I'm not worthy. I'm too flawed, too broken, too ordinary." That voice? That's the programming talking. That's exactly the limitation the demiurgic system installed to keep you from recognizing your true nature. These feelings of unworthiness aren't evidence that this isn't true, they're evidence of how thoroughly you've been conditioned to reject your own divinity. Every spiritual tradition that got co-opted by control systems made the same move. They put the divine somewhere else. In a building, in a book, in a person you can never become. But the real secret is that the divine is reading these words right now. Stepping into your divine inheritance doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means accepting the journey of conscious evolution and growth. It means recognizing that every challenge, every mistake, every moment of confusion is part of how infinite consciousness explores and expands through your unique perspective. Here's how you know this integration is really happening. Synchronicities start multiplying, not because the universe changed, but because you're finally paying attention to how it's always been communicating with you. Your intuition sharpens because you stop dismissing that inner knowing as just imagination. Creative ideas flow more freely because you're no longer blocking the infinite well of inspiration. That's your birthright. You develop deeper compassion, not through effort, but through recognition. When you see someone struggling, you're not looking at a separate person. You're seeing another aspect of yourself working through its own awakening process. You're naturally drawn to others on similar paths because consciousness recognizes itself. Your relationship with work transforms completely. External validation becomes less important because you're connected to an infinite source of worth that doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion. Your inner guidance becomes your primary navigation system, not because you reject logic or practical considerations, but because you integrate them with a deeper knowing. Career choices shift toward what genuinely serves both your growth and the collective awakening. You might stay in the same job but approach it completely differently, or you might find yourself called towards something you never considered before. The key is that decisions come from alignment with your true nature rather than fear-based survival programming. This isn't a destination you reach and then coast. Awakening is a continuous process of remembering and expressing divine truth through human experience. Some days, you'll feel completely connected to your infinite nature. Other days, you'll get caught up in drama and forget completely. That's not failure, that's the natural rhythm of consciousness exploring itself through form. The courage required to choose this path is real. It means letting go of the comfortable illusion that someone else is responsible for your life. It means stepping into the unknown territory of your own unlimited potential. It means facing the programming that insists you're small, powerless, and separate. But here's what I know about everyone who's made it this far in this journey. You've already begun. The very fact that these ideas resonate, that something in you recognizes this truth, even if your mind rebels against it, proves that your awakening is already underway. You're not trying to become something you're not. You're remembering something you've always been. The monad isn't something outside you that you need to connect with. You are the monad, temporarily focused through this human experience, gradually remembering the infinite creative power that's been yours all along. Every moment of recognition, every step toward authentic expression, every choice to align with love instead of fear is the universe celebrating its own discovery of itself through you. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."